Hey there guys, James Wilson here, and welcome to this week's episode of James Presents here on Who Addicts Reviews. I'm a bit pressed for time at the minute because me and Matthew and a bunch of other Who Addicts are going to be going live on YouTube in the next 15 minutes, so I'm a bit pressed for time at the minute. In your guys' opinion, the discussion's already happened, so, you know, you've probably already watched it. Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. Today's video, I'll be taking a break from my Doctor Who Story Arcs videos, and today I'll be returning to my character reviews for just 1 week only, so you guys are in for a bit of a treat, where I will be talking about my newfound love for the character The Master. I've always loved the guy, but I guess I appreciate the character a lot more. So guys, enjoy! Now, I've always enjoyed The Master, especially John Simm's portrayal of the renegade Time Lord, but a few days ago, I think it was on the Friday, I was watching these special features on the Terror of the Autons DVD, and the writers and directors and the people working on the story Terror of the Autons, which most people will know, that was the first ever story to ever feature the Master, and those people were talking about how brilliant Roger Delgado was at playing it, and I completely agree. I think Matthew would agree as well that Roger Delgado brought some charm, and I think there's always been an element of charm in every sort of man to play the Master. I think that's the sort of key to this character, is that he's you know that he's evil. You know he's the epitome of evil. And he would not hesitate to kill you. In fact, he'd find it a little bit fun. But you kind of smile at him and you think, I know he wants to kill that guy, but I can't help but love him because, you know, he's just so cool and amazing. You know, it's one of those things. It's one of those allies that the Master has, is his own charm and his own wit and sophistication, that sort of he gets people on his side and he convinces people and he persuades them and he sort of twists their minds a little bit and he uses that to his advantage and in a very evil and twisted way. So you know he's evil, but he's just so good at being awesome, you know, and you forgive him for that. But when I was watching the special features, it definitely a bit of New Who came into it when there was an interview with the old Doctor Who producer Phil Collinson, and really that was that interview sort of gave me a new perspective on this character. Although I have always loved the Master, don't get me wrong, but in the classic era, I always pictured the Master as not very, you know, likable to me. I always sort of saw him as very panto-esque, very you know, mustache twirling, evil laugh, you know, all of that very generic, very cheesy sort of thing, and I never really, I guess that was just my New Who perspective of the classic series that kind of, but that was back when I was blind to the beauty of the classic series, but now I'm starting to see the complexity of, if that's even a word, of the Master, because I believe that this character has a lot more than just twirling the mustache and doing a big evil laugh, you know, and taking over the world. I think there's definitely more to him than that. First, let me talk about Roger Delgado's brilliant performance. He was, for the very first time, seen materializing out of his TARDIS that had turned into some sort of trailer, like some sort of caravette or trailer or something like that, and he just walked out of it. He just pounced out of it, and and that fat man with the cigars was obviously had seen it materialize right in front of him, and obviously the Master had just said, "They call me the Master." "Oh, is that right?" "Universally." And honestly, that was just a brilliant line. I think people call me the Master. "Oh, is that right?" Yes, they do, universally. So he's very sure of himself. That it's like a name that it's like the Doctor. Really, the Doctor gave himself his own name. He gave himself the name the Doctor. He chose that. But the Master, he gives it a lot more sort of, I don't know. He chose his name, and it's like he thought of it and said to himself, right, that sounds a bit more awesome than the Doctor, because the Doctor, what's so interesting about the Doctor? It's not very interesting. It's just a guy who holds a stethoscope and just heals people who get better, to make people better. So I think the Master always found that very weak of the Doctor, and I think the Master always found himself very much superior to the Doctor. So I think he just thought to himself, the Master, that has such a just that name, although it still begins with a it still definitely has a sort of mirror image to the Doctor, because that's what the idea was, to give the Doctor an equal, because Jon Pertwee and Brigadier had the Third Doctor and Brigadier had established a sort of Sherlock Holmes and John Watson sort of feel to it. So the writers felt like they needed a sort of Moriarty figure, and they definitely did that brilliantly. And at first, I always thought that, back then, do you think that was maybe riffing on Sherlock Holmes a little bit too much? Maybe people just called it a sci-fi version of Sherlock Holmes, because given that the Third Doctor was on planet Earth almost all the time, I do think that maybe the writers kind of riffed on Sherlock Holmes a little bit too much. I dread to think what the audience might have thought at the time, but still, I don't hold that against them whatsoever. The Master is an absolutely beautiful creation, I think, and yeah. So Roger Delgado, his first appearance in Terror of the Autons was amazing, but I recently just bought The Mind of Evil, which was his second story, which followed on from Terror of the Autons, and really, again, another amazing story. And a couple of years, or a couple of months or something, had passed since Terror of the Autons, because the Master seems to have established himself quite well as the Doctor's arch nemesis. The Master's only just arrived. I think it would take time. I think it would take a couple of years or so for him to be thought of as the Doctor's arch nemesis. But yes, I think a couple of years might have passed since Terror of the Autons, and the Master had built this machine with the help of a professor to sort of change the minds of criminals and make them good, or make them do what he says. And really, it's a brilliant story, because the Master finally establishes his one fear, I think, and that's he fears the Doctor looming over him. And I think that's been woven in even in John Sims' performance. There's a hell of a lot of classic era references, very very deep into the writing that Russell and I think Stephen Moffat did, that we don't even realize anymore. We just pick out these things and we don't even realize because. But anyway, before I get to John Sim, after Roger Delgado, it was Jeremy Beavers. I'm not too sure if I've got his first name right. You can't forget a second name like Beavers, I'll tell you. But I think that was his name, Jeremy Beavers or something. And he was a very deformed sort of Master, but he could still convince people. He could still twist their minds and sort of use that charm, And I think that was definitely a change from Roger Delgado. Obviously, Roger Delgado wanted to go out with a bang. He wanted his Master to sort of leave on good terms, but sadly, Roger Delgado died in an accident before he could. So that was really a tremendous loss, and I often think to myself, what would have that story been like? That story that Roger Delgado wanted so very very much. He wanted the Master to go out with a bang, but what would have that story been like? That's what I always think. But yes, so Jeremy Beavers, I think the Master started to get used less and less because in the Third Doctor era, the Master was in every single story of his first season. So the writers apparently thought that the Master was getting a bit overused and that he was getting a bit too predictable too quickly. I mean, we'd only just met him, so he was getting a bit predictable. So they sort of downplayed him a little bit and didn't make him appear as much and make it a sort of surprise every time he'd appear. But then after Jeremy Beavers was Anthony Ainley. Anthony Ainley was originally an old man from the Keeper of Traken, and for another quite a good story, the story after that to follow, which was Tom Baker's final story, not exactly the best story I've ever seen. In fact, I've seen far better. But the Master had taken over the body of this Traken man, and I'm forgetting character names here. I'm going to kick myself when I find out what his character name is. But yes, so yes, the Master takes this Traken man's body, and we are suddenly faced with. See, that's the thing. When an actor plays a completely different character, I don't think Anthony Ainley ever thought to himself, right, okay, I've just went from being a old Traken man who's a good friend of the Doctor and has been helping him to his worst enemy. So it's definitely a huge contrast there, and I think it was definitely a big cliffhanger. You go from this man who you love, and then a character who you start to enjoy, and then he turns into the Master basically, and that's really something quite amazing. So yes, Anthony Ainley goes from long grey locks and grey beard to a very neat, slicked back to the back of his head, jet black hair, and a mustache goatee sort of thing going on. A lot like, I think he was trying too hard to be like Roger Delgado's Master. I think there were moments where he would show aspects of Roger Delgado, and I would just think to myself, is he trying too hard? I think the writers just wanted him to. I'll admit, I think he was the longest running Master. I think he was from. He made his first appearance in The Keeper of Traken, which was he made his debut in Logopolis, I think, or Keeper of Traken, and then he was well into the Seventh Doctor's era. So I think Anthony Ainley might just be the longest lasting man to play the Master, which I'll admit is very, very admirable. But out of all the Masters, I'd say it's. I'll get to Eric Roberts. Don't worry. God, you can't forget Eric Roberts, although I have very much tried to. But yeah, Anthony Ainley was, I think, a brilliant Master, and I respect the fact that Anthony Ainley's Master had lasted a very, very long time playing in that role. But I do think that he is an easily forgettable one, although he's the longest running one, because he just showed too many aspects of Roger Delgado, and I would have loved him a lot better in his stories if he would have just played his own character a little bit. If he was in charge of his wardrobe, if he was in charge of the way the character was being played, then maybe it would be a lot better. But that being said, I do think that that Anthony Ainley's Master was a lot more hands-on. He didn't use his charm as much. There was barely any charm at all in his Master, because Anthony Ainley, I think, was very practical. He knew he was better than the Doctor, and he didn't ever try to sugarcoat it. He didn't ever try to seduce people or anything like that. He would occasionally use his hypnotic powers over people, but he wouldn't really use it as much because he just used force. And that's something quite scary and quite creepy. So that being said, although he did sort of rip off Roger Delgado's certain looks and certain ways he'd say things, but he was a much more forceful Master than any other one. But yes, after Anthony Ainley, we hadn't seen him again until the TV movie. Oh, Matthew's going to love this. Eric Roberts, right? Eric Roberts, right? I've seen him in a fair few things besides the TV movie. He was the baddie in the first Expendables movie. Yes, again, easily forgettable. He's just been cast in the third Human Centipede, yeah, you can tell his career's not exactly on good on good on good. Just it's not very good. His career is just not very good. I was trying to find a word there that best to describe his career, but it's just bad. But yes, Eric Roberts' portrayal of the Master was just, oh my God, I could not get into him. I mean, yes, I know he's American, so you know I'm not going to hold that against him being American. But I just think his Master was far too cheesy. And I might be contradicting myself a little bit because Roger Delgado and Anthony Ainley, they were quite a lot of times very cheesy with the evil laugh and everything. But we were going into we were, I mean, come on, we were over halfway through the late 20th century. Come on, I mean, we were just 4 or 5 years away from the 21st century. Come on, you can't get away with cheesiness like that. I thought acting would have actually sort of progressed in that time. Yes, I know 60s and 70s acting was very hammed up and very sort of in your face, but I thought that in the late 90s, I definitely would have thought that acting would have progressed. And Eric Roberts, his acting just didn't progress whatsoever in that. His reactions to what was going on was just completely hammed up, and I think he just watched every single classic era episode and just thought, right, okay, I'll just do what they're doing. You know, I think he just got Roger Delgado, Jeremy Beavers, and Anthony Ainley, and just mushed them all together to create one big rip-off Master. And he is probably the most forgetful one, and I really don't know why some people actually like him. And don't even get me started on the spitting acid. I don't know whose idea that was, whether it was the director or the writer. Yes, the TV movie, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's better than Time and the Rani, because the TV movie, I'll admit, it's enjoyable. I sit down and I watch it and I enjoy it. But the thing is that the Master should never spit acid. Yes, by all means, hypnotize someone. That was done quite well. But spitting acid that then turned Grace evil, I really don't understand. And don't even get me started on the jizz snake thing, because the Master suddenly turns into a snake. Is that his soul? I seriously don't understand that. Why was he a snake? Why? The soul can take many other different forms. I mean, is that his inner animal? Is he a serpent, a poisonous serpent? I don't know. I'm guessing here. But don't you? And also the green eyes. Some people claim that those green cat-like eyes were kind of calling back to the episode that we'd seen previous, Survival, in 1989, and I think the writer did think, all right, okay, we don't want to completely ignore the episode that went before, so let's give the Master some cat-like green eyes. But that's the thing, it just added to the cheesiness, it just added to the "Mwahaha, I'm the Master" sort of thing. And like I said before, the Master, I've got a newfound love for the character, because he's gotten a lot more he's much more complex than I gave him credit for at first. But Eric Roberts' Master, he just took all complexity out of that character and just completely stamped on it. And I hope Eric Roberts never ever returns to that role. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, he's not the Master. And next up is Professor Yana. Some people forget about this guy, because for a majority of his time as the Master, he got a good 5, maybe 10 minutes as the Master before regenerating into John Sim. But I think he... See, me and Matthew kind of worked this out, and I think a lot of people have too. This man was the Master for the War Doctor. Think about it. He turned himself human. The Master turned himself human, right? And as far as I'm aware, a Time Lord can't actually... turning himself human, it doesn't change him physically. So the Master or the Doctor doesn't have to regenerate to turn himself human. It doesn't change any of his looks or anything. He still looks exactly the same. But he still turned himself human. So, really, Professor Yana, Derek Jacobi's Master, that was the Master for John Hurt's War Doctor. Because he turned himself human right after running away from the Time War, which, as we know now, John Hurt was the Doctor in. So I sometimes just think to myself, wow, wouldn't it have been brilliant to see Derek Jacobi's Master way beforehand, I mean, that would have been something quite brilliant, really. But obviously the Master ran away, so he was a bit more of a coward than anything else. But yes, so Derek Jacobi's Master, people forget about him, but I love his Master, although because he played that nice, very lovable sort of character who I was convinced was going to die in the end, because I always think to myself, right, oh my God, that's a great character, and he's going to die soon. But then I'm like, holy crap, he's the Master. So you know, when he utters that word and kills his trusted assistant Chantho, that is what epitomizes him as evil to me. He just utters, "I am the Master," and then electrocutes her to death. That to me is the Master right there. I mean, Derek Jacobi, he's capable of so much. He's a fantastic actor, and really, he's just brilliant on stage. I've not seen him on stage, but I've heard he's absolutely brilliant. And really, just even after 5-10 minutes of playing the Master, I wished I could have seen more of him. So hopefully, in this new Engines of War book that's being written about John Hurt's War Doctor, I do hope that Derek Jacobi's Master is referenced. Because you know it's obvious that Derek Jacobi's Master was actually in the Time War. That he was the Master then, so you know that it'd be great to see his Master there. But yes, now on to the final man, the latest and most recent man to play the Master, John frickin' Sim. My God, what an amazing man! This is obviously Roger Delgado had definitely shown in The Mind of Evil that he actually fears the Doctor a little bit. Doesn't fear him, but is kind of envies him. And it's John Sim's Master that definitely shows the sort of much more softer, much more sort of tolerable side of the character. He's much more softer. He's much more, yes, he's merciless, and he's absolutely insane. This Master has got, honestly, he's about 5 sandwiches short of a picnic, this one, because really this Master is completely insane. I think we all remember that scene in the Cabinet Room in 10 Downing Street where he kills all of the members of Parliament. No, not all the members of Parliament, just all of his like MPs in the room or something, and he just taps the 4 drums beat on the table with his gas mask on, and he's just watching all these people die, and really that is just insane, just completely mental. I mean, I'm not going to say that this man's too soft, because he isn't. He's merciless. He's mental. He's insane. If I actually came face to face with him, I would have actually crapped myself. But I do think he definitely showed a softer side, because he showed his sort of envy for the Doctor's life. And I think Russell definitely understood that, and I think he thought to himself, right, I'm going to bring back the Master, but I need to bring him back Roger Delgado style, proper, sort of a much softer side to him. But see, what I'm referencing to is in The Last of the Time Lords. At first, I felt cheated out of an absolutely brilliant line, and I think everyone else did at the time, and the Master... the Doctor was saying throughout The Last of the Time Lords, he was saying, there's something I need to tell you, and you know what it is. And the Master kept changing the subject. So at the time, I was like, but what? What could be so brilliant about this? What could be so amazing that the Doctor has to say about him that the Master's so scared to say? And then in the very end, when the Doctor, randomly, for some reason, turns blue and can fly, he then, which is also a reference within itself, which I'll get to in a second, the Doctor then wraps the Master up in his arms, and the Doctor says, "I forgive you." And the Master, I think he really doesn't like that. I think that's a worse fate than death for the Master. I think he'd rather die than the Master forgive him, because I think that's what the Master's trying to do. The Master is trying to get the attention of the Doctor. He's trying to get the Doctor's attention. Come on, I mean, what does the Master have to do to get a bit of attention from the Doctor? He has tried to take over the universe God knows how many times. He's taken over planet Earth, killed killed a large majority of its population with his Toclafane people. He pretty much went to the future, killed, morphed the future human race into Toclafane, and he turned the Doctor into Gandalf, and then he turned him into Gollum in two completely different swipes of the laser sonic screwdriver. So he turned him into two different Lord of the Rings characters in a split second. So what does this man have to do to get some recognition? You know, the Doctor comes up to him and he says, "I forgive you," and the Master just thinks that that's a stab in the gut, because he's just like, "What? I've just tried to take over the world, and you're forgiving me?" And he feels like he's been ignored right there. And I think that's an absolutely brilliant reference. And the fact he's floating up in the air, yes, that might be a bit random and a little bit pointless at times, but it also refers to the Master saying he doesn't like the Doctor, like looming over him, So I think that's definitely a reference within itself. A bit of a pointless reference, and it's not really important, but I think that's definitely the Master's biggest fear, I think. And John Sim had definitely sort of portrayed that a lot better than anyone else, I think. So then, guys, I think that's all I've got time for right now. I hope you guys have enjoyed my little talk on each and every single one of the Master. I hope you guys have grown to enjoy the Master as much as I have. So then, guys, let's answer a few comments. Now I'm going to be answering a few comments from last week's video, which was my review of the Dr. Donna story arc. Can I just apologise first, guys, because I was walking home from college and I kind of got caught in the rain. So, yeah, dead annoying, isn't it, when your hair gets dead wet in the rain? It's just awful. But my first comment is from Frankie Hollins, who says, "I thought the development that Donna had was very thought about. Unlike Rose in Series 2, though it was rushed ending for her, she deserved a lot more than that." You're right. You're very much right. I mean, Russell, bless him, he tried his best to do what was best for the 21st century adaptation of the show. And I've came to terms with the fact that we did live in a much more romantic age where romance was around more than any other, and sex and romance was definitely a lot more popular then in 2005 than it's ever been. But now the whole romance thing, it's gotten so old, and no one really wants that anymore. Fair enough if it's in something like 2003 or 2006 or something, but no one really wants that anymore. No one wants a Doctor companion romance. We've seen it far too many times. But yes, the Rose's series in Series 2 was just downright awful. I mean, the disrespect she gave Sarah Jane, I wanted to punch her in the face. And Rose just had a terrible run. She just got annoying in her final series as an incumbent companion. I mean, she just became just towards her final season. Rose just became the Ninth Doctor, who she adored quite well, and as we know from Born Again, the Children in Need special back in 2005, it took Rose a while to get used to this new Doctor, but she always knew that, oh, this guy's much sexier than the last one, so, she clung to this Doctor's leg a lot more than I think she did the Ninth. So in that way, she's a very shallow, very egotistical, and rather just incredibly selfish bitch, and just wants the Doctor all to herself. And it really got annoying, and it made her very unlikable. But Russell, I think, in a way, tried to make it up to date with the 21st century, which was romance and all that crap. But that's not really something I want to see anymore. There needs to be something new, and with Capaldi, that's definitely going to happen. My next comment is from Joe Chapman, who says, "Screw this, the last episode of Season 4 was awesome, and Season 4 was awesome. Screw you, sir." Thank you. Thank you for being so incredibly kind with your screw yous. That's incredibly nice of you.
I don't think I'm sorry. I don't think I've ever had such a dedicated subscriber as you. Oh, I'm sorry. On to the next comment. Joe Chapman. You're just amazing. My third and final comment is from James 12s, who says, you're pretty spot on with this review. Donna did deserve so much better. She's my top new era companion, and with Davros it could have been so much more. Although his parts were okay, the best Davros episodes are still Genesis and Revelation of the Daleks, where he makes people into food and his hand gets shot off. A good dark episode. Maybe one for your review list. Thanks for the Doctor reviews. Honestly, you are completely right. Donna deserved so much better as a companion. She was an absolutely brilliant one, and she was a breath of fresh air. Really, she was. She was one of those characters that were incredibly likeable, yet at the same time had a sort of sternness. But you can tell towards the end of her season, she was incredibly soft as well. She kind of had this sort of vulnerability about her, which was absolutely brilliant, and Catherine Tate absolutely nailed that role with ease, and I thought it was brilliant. Yes, I will definitely, but I think Matthew will want to review Genesis of the Daleks, because he adores that story. Not that I don't, I love Genesis, both Genesis of the Daleks and Revelation of the Daleks. I think they're both amazing stories, but I think I'll give Genesis of the Daleks to Matthew, because, you know, he's got that DVD, and I wouldn't want to steal his thunder. So then guys, that's it for this week. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and please do comment in the section below what you guys think about the character of the Master, and I will answer them in next week's video, where I will be returning to my Doctor Who story arc videos. And also, don't forget to tune in this Wednesday on the channel, where me and Matthew will be continuing our bad episode marathon. It can't get any worse than the Wedding of River Song, surely. You guys will find a way. You guys will find a way. Ugh. Anyway, I will see you guys on Wednesday. See you next time.